Hey guys, Eric here with Master Tool Repair. If you have a problem with your compressor and where it squeals or you get low compression, most of the time when you hear a squeal or you get low compression, it's due to a very simple factor. Today we're going to talk about that. Belt tension. Either lack of, or it's too tight. So a lot of problems can arise when you have your dry belt on your compressor is too loose or too tight. Alright, so I'm kind of going to describe the symptoms of a belt that's too loose and too tight and what to do to rectify that. Alright, so here's a belt driven compressor with a standard V belt, a contractor duty. This is gas engine driven, but you know, we're going to talk about belt tension, which is the same kind of issue on an electric driven motor. So it doesn't matter if it's electric or gas, alright? It's going to be the same issue. Alright, so a lot of times I get calls from customers and say, hey, my compressor's squealing very loudly, and you know, the first thing you want to check is certainly is the belt slipping. Alright, and the other symptom of that problem is my compressor's not pressurizing like it used to, or it seems sluggish, get low compression. Well, that's going to happen because if your belt is too loose, right, it's going to slip on the flywheel. So you're not going to get that constant rotation, so of course your compression is going to suffer. So look here, this is the easiest way, easiest fix for low compression. And unless it's something obvious like your valves blew up, something obvious like that, look for belt tension first. Alright, so the rule of thumb is this. Your belt tension, if you press down on the center point in between the sheave and the flywheel, you want to put approximately, say, 5 pounds of force, press down with approximately 5 pounds of force, and you should get no more than a ½ inch deflection. Alright, if you get more than a ½ inch, your belts are too loose and your belts will slip, and that of course could fray the belt, destroy the belt, and it will cause squealing and loss of compression. Alright, so easy way to do this, just take a tape measure. You know, don't need a micrometer or anything like that, don't need to be that specific, but what we're going to do is just hold the ruler at the top of the belt. Say start at the 1 inch mark, alright, we're going to press down. You see the top of the belt? It is at the ½ inch mark. So this is just at that ½ inch mark, just at the maximum. This is the maximum deflection you want. And actually these could be even tightened a bit more. But we're going to hold it at the 1 inch mark, press down. The top of the belt is at the ½ inch mark. So we have a ½ inch deflection on these belts. So they're probably good. And if you have a belt that's too tight, whereas it doesn't budge whatsoever when you press down, that's also, that can be detrimental to the pump and the engine or the motor. Because if you have a belt that's too tight, what is it doing? The force of the belt and the tension is pulling the output shaft of the engine and the pump inwards. It's pulling it towards each other. So eventually, with some time, you know, your crankshaft and your output shafts are cockeyed and they run like that, and that can totally destroy the bearings. So that will ruin pump bearings, and it can ruin your engine or motor bearing. So you want some deflection, but again, no more than a ½ inch. All right, and pulley alignment is another very important factor. You might as well check this while you are checking the tension on your belt or belts. We can kind of look at and eyeball the sheave and the flywheel. We can see that it looks aligned, but if you want to be sure, here's what you'll do. All right, take a straight edge and just make sure it's say like a T or something like that is sufficient. All right, and you're going to want to hold it against the edge of the straight edge, against the flywheel, okay, the outside of the flywheel. So press it against, make sure it's flush with the outside of the flywheel, and you're going to hold it up about the same level as the belts. And what we're doing is we're measuring the distance in between the straight edge and the belt. Again, don't really need to use something specific like a micrometer. We can just use a tape measure for this. So what we're going to do is we're going to measure in a few different points to make sure the distance is the same. If it's not the same, then your motor, sheave, and your flywheel is not aligned. Alright, so let's go ahead and start at the 1 inch mark here, close to the flywheel, say at the end of the flywheel. We have about 3/16. Did you see there? About 3/16 of an inch. Alright, we're going to move to the middle center point of the sheave and the flywheel, see what we get. Alright, start at the 1 inch mark there at the end of the belt. See, about 3/16. Hasn't really changed a whole lot. And now at the end of the sheave on the engine. let's go ahead and start at the 1 inch mark, 3/16. So there we go. We have an aligned motor, sheave, and flywheel. So now when your pulley, motor pulley or sheave, and your flywheel is not aligned, what do you do to align it? Well, here's how you're going to align your motor pulley and the flywheel. And typically it's the motor or engine pulley that you're going to adjust that will be out of alignment. From the factory, don't typically have to worry about this, but you know, it can certainly happen. All right, so what you're going to do is you're going to take the set screw out from the pulley or the sheave on the motor engine. All right, so once you take out the set screw and the key, you can push this or pull this back on the motor shaft. You know, so if it's misaligned and it's out too far, you're going to press it back, and it can be a little difficult to do. You want to put typically a socket or something around the outer perimeter and kind of knock it back with a hammer, so you can do that. But you can move it front to back on the motor shaft and to realign it. So that's how you're going to realign your motor pulley. Now the pump or motor will typically have slots so where you can adjust it. Now the motor doesn't in this case, the engine, right? It's just bolted down. But see the slots in the frame here? The pump, you can loosen these bolts and you can turn it slightly cockeyed. So if it is cockeyed and if it is not straight, you can loosen the bolts and kind of adjust the pump a little bit to give yourself more of alignment. Say if it's cockeyed like this, in or out, and you can adjust it slightly. But if you have a bad alignment, really bad alignment, you're going to want to adjust the motor pulley on the output shaft. If the belts are too loose and you have to adjust the tightness in the tension, and you want more tension, you see the pump has slots, so we're going to move the pump back. So what you do is loosen the 4 bolts, and you'll typically put like some kind of block or piece of wood in between, for instance the block of the engine and the pump, just so it remains tight, and pull it back, kind of shove your chock in there in between, and you're going to pull it back and tighten it down until you have a 1/2 inch deflection or a little less. So, and then bolt these back down. So that's how you're going to adjust the tension. And if you do that to the point where you pull the pump all the way back and it still is not tight enough, then clearly your belts are just simply worn out and you need to replace your belts.